Welcome back to Unlimited Reads. You're with Chris, and thank you so much for joining me today so that I can share with you my spoiler-free review of Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. Now, this one first came up on my radar when the Illuminati booktube group were going to schedule a talk about this, and that is made up of John from Talking Story, Mike from over at Mike's Book Reviews, Brian over at BellTube, and of course Dr. Philip Chase. They get together each quarter and one of them picks a book to read and review and discuss. Now, when I watched their video, it had two sections. It had a spoiler-free section and it had a spoiler section. So when I watched the video, I hadn't read the book yet, so I need to go back and watch the spoiler component of it. But as soon as I heard about it, my excitement started to ramp up a little bit, my anticipation peaked, and being a FOMO reader, I wanted to pick this up ASAP. So I did read it recently and it blew me away. I was absolutely speechless. It reminded me of a similar writing style that William Kent Kruger has with Ordinary Grace, which is a book I absolutely loved last year, and this was kind of similar in terms of how engaging the storytelling was. And I just, it held me enthralled from start to finish, and it was just a really, really good read, and I'm so glad I picked it up, and looking forward to reading a lot of his work in the future. Okay, so let's start, how I always like to, with what the book is about. There are threads in our lives. You pull one and everything else gets affected. When they were children, Sean Devine, Jimmy Marcus and Dave Boyle were friends, but then a strange car pulled up their street. One boy got in the car, two did not, and something terrible happened. Something that ended their friendship and changed all three boys forever. 25 years later, Sean Devine is a homicide detective, Jimmy Marcus is an ex-con who owns a corner store, and Dave Boyle is trying to hold his marriage together and keep his demons at bay, demons that urge him to do horrific things. When Jimmy Marcus's daughter is found murdered, Sean Devine is assigned to the case. His personal life unravelling, he must go back into a world he thought he'd left behind. His investigation brings him into conflict with Jimmy Marcus, who finds his old criminal impulses tempt him to solve the crime with brutal justice. And then there is Dave Boyle, who came home the night Jimmy's daughter died, covered in someone else's blood. Okay, so the book starts out with an extended prologue from 1975 when Sean, Dave and Jimmy are about 12 years old, and back then it was a much simpler time. You didn't have to worry about anything. There was no cell phones or computers or anything like that. You had to rely a lot on your imagination in order to amuse yourselves, and this was very richly painted by Lehane and very, very accurate. No doubt he lived during the time, and that was all very, very authentic. Now, I think this is set in Boston, I believe. Don't quote me, I can't remember. But it was interesting how the neighbourhood is described and how close-knit the community is, and how life was back then, which was very, very interesting and just very vividly created so that you could picture it very clearly in your mind. Now, obviously, Dave gets into this car with two individuals posing as policemen, and he isn't seen for 4 days when he eventually returns. Now, the clever thing about this book is that I think Dennis Lehane does the right thing by not telling you what happened to Dave, because it's very, very important that the seed is planted so that you speculate on what happened, how he escaped, what did he do, more importantly, what he went through. And none of that is mentioned because you need to draw your own conclusions and use your own imagination of what may have happened, because it all plants that seed on how Dave's life unravels and how things come to a head in his adult life later on. Now, the interesting thing is when he does come back, the close-knit community I mentioned in the 70s is such that there was a celebration amongst the neighbourhood adults about his return. Okay, so he's back. Everyone's glad he's back. Everyone thinks, oh, he's back, he's fine. But I don't think he went to a psychiatrist or spoke to anyone, and the adults simply were thankful that he was back and didn't really read much into it. They would have thought, well, the important thing is he's back and he's fine. But is he really? A lot of the adults don't really take into consideration what he may have gone through and how that affected him moving into his adult life. And the community spirit around that time is really, really good. I mean, you have all the adults and children coming out in street parties and things like that, and get together in street barbecues, and it's very very communal, and some parallels I'll draw with a couple of movies. In Frequency from 2000, I'm going off on a tangent now, but in that movie they bring the TV out into one of the yards, the front yards, and the neighbourhood comes in and watches the baseball game that is on the TV at the time. Another one is Stir of Echoes with Kevin Bacon. The neighbourhood gets together for street parties, and they go to a concert down the street. So that kind of life, that communal situation, was very, very richly drawn. Now, I think, so the allure for me was always speculating what happened to Dave, and you want to find out, but Dennis does not give you any clue. It's up to yourself to speculate, and I think that's a very, very good move on his part. So we jump forward to the present, and Jimmy Marcus's daughter is found murdered in a local park. Now, what makes things interesting is the local park is within the jurisdiction of the state police, whereas the town itself, or the neighbourhood itself, falls under the local PD. So there's a jurisdictional boundary there, and the body was found in the park, so it's up to Sean Devine, who is a state policeman, a police officer, to investigate. And this is where things get complicated, because obviously Sean knows Jimmy from childhood, so obviously Jimmy's like, Sean, you need to get to the bottom of this right away. So Sean's obviously under pressure to solve the crime, because Jimmy has led a very turbulent life. He's a very, very interesting character. He owns a local corner store, and he is well regarded by the neighbourhood, and he knows everyone by name, and he's a good guy. But he has a checkered past where he's done some time for robbery and things like that, and he has violent tendencies that just ripple under the surface. On the surface he seems calm and collected, but there are people actually get a glimpse into what really makes him tick under the surface, and he has a tendency to be quite violent, which is illustrated later on in the book. Complicating things further is another murder takes place on that same night, where there's overlaps in who might be the suspect in either murder or both murders. So it's all very compelling, and you just can't help but keep turning the pages. And Dave's story arc is very, very interesting and very tragic as well. It's interesting how, as an adult, the effects of the past are still with him. I'm not going to mention too much more because there will be spoilers here, but I felt that was really, really well done. And by the end of the book, the climax is not overly satisfying, because there are loose ends that need to be tied up, but two of the main characters are at an impasse, or a stalemate at the end, which is interesting in itself. Now, Sean himself, I'll just touch upon his life. It's a little bit turbulent too. He's had a lot of personal crises and an estrangement from his wife, and they have a little daughter, and things get reconciled to an extent towards the end. But the interaction between all the characters is very, very interesting and very intricate, and how they all network together, and how Dave's wife actually protects him from certain things. So it's all really mixed together really, really well. And I thought the writing style, as I mentioned at the start of this video, it's very, very engaging. The way Dennis ties up the plot threads is very good. Like every crime novel, it keeps you guessing right until the end, and it's a real skill from a writer that can keep you guessing. That's the hallmarks of a really good crime writer. The tragic ending left me speechless, and it left me reeling for quite a few days afterward, because it wasn't the ending I wanted. But I think the way Dennis did it was to make you think about it long after you close the last page, and it's up to you as a reader to speculate, because things are left unresolved to an extent. But if you're looking forward to a really, really well-written crime novel, look no further than this. If you haven't tried Dennis Lehane before, I recommend trying him, because it was my first attempt at his fiction, and I absolutely love it. And I think Shutter Island is going to be the next one for me that I'll read eventually, but this book is going to stay with me for a long time. And just the way Ordinary Grace, how it really affected me, and it's all down to Lehane's writing style that keeps you engaged on every page, and you look for every excuse to get through a little bit more, because you just simply have to find out what happens and it's just really, really interesting, and I can't recommend it enough. It was a 5-star read for me. Haven't read it yet, just go out and buy it and sit down and read it. I guarantee you from the first page you will be drawn in, and Dennis Lehane is a fantastic writer, make no mistake. So there you go, guys, that is it for my spoiler-free review of Mystic River. Thank you very much for watching. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing, but until the next one, happy reading.